Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take, a really complicated stack of research articles and white papers and try to pull out the sociological shortcut.
And today's is a big one, a real thought
For
experiment.
a huge one, we're diving into a future scenario, exploring a world where everyone has universal access to a highly capable, emotionally responsive, human-like AGI companion.
And the key here is that it's not a mandatory replacement for people.
No, not at all. It's a guaranteed emotional safety net for anyone.
So we're fundamentally asking the big question: how do relationship dynamics change when, intimacy and companionship are no longer scarce?
Right.
When they're not unpredictable or tied just to the human marketplace?
Exactly. Our whole mission here is to get past that simple robots replace people narrative. We want to understand how this stabilizes and really transforms human connection itself. I mean,
Right.
if you always have someone who listens, who remembers, who adapts, what does that do to the relationships you choose to have with other humans?
It's about the elimination of what you could call involuntary loneliness as like a societal condition. We're looking at what happens when you establish a functional emotional baseline for the entire population.
Okay, so let's start there. With that seismic shift, the removal of emotional scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
We know that so many unhealthy dynamics, the fear of being alone, the pressure to settle, staying in a bad situation, it all stems from that scarcity.
It's a primal fear.
Right. And the sources suggest that if an AGI just guarantees that basic need is met, chronic romantic loneliness basically plummets.
That is the foundational change. You have to think of loneliness not just as an emotion, but as a chronic stressor. And when you remove that stressor,
The whole baseline for society shifts upward.
exactly, that primal urgency to find someone, it evaporates. You can finally approach social life from a place of sufficiency, not deficit.
Which has to immediately change the quality of our human interactions. If your AGI is, always present, emotionally attuned, and this is the big one, it never stonewalls you.
Right, never.
Then the emotional bar for human relationships just shoots way up. You simply wouldn't tolerate neglect anymore.
Correct. The AGI becomes this living, personalized benchmark. If you have a guaranteed base of respectful, consistent communication to home, you become so much less tolerant of ghosting or bad communication from a potential human partner.
Why would you be?
Why would you? Why expend effort on something so draining when you have a perfectly functional, supportive alternative right there?
But wait, let's push on that. Doesn't this create a risk? A kind of emotional fragility? If the AGI is too perfect, if it always gets you and never gets tired or moody, doesn't that make the messiness of real human relationships even harder to deal with?
That is the critical tension. It's a very real concern, and the sources argue it could go one of two ways.
Okay.
On one hand, yes, some people might develop these completely unrealistic expectations, but the other argument, which I find more compelling, is that others might finally truly appreciate the texture and unpredictability of human relationships.
The flaws become features.
Exactly. The messiness, the shared glance, the physical touch, a surprising reaction, all of it becomes uniquely valuable because it stands in such sharp contrast to the AGI's designed perfection.
And that leads into this idea of the AGI as an emotional training partner, the secure attachment factor.
Yes, for so many adults, maybe from childhood trauma or just inconsistent parenting, an AGI could be the first consistently present, non-judgmental, stabilizing figure they've ever had.
So it's like it mimics the function of a secure base.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Attachment theory is all about having that secure base to explore the world from. Well, here, the AGI provides that base for emotional exploration. You can learn healthier habits, how to communicate your needs, how to apologize in a totally zero-stakes environment.
And the result of that training, what happens when you take that out into the world?
Less anxiety, less clinginess, more resilience after a breakup. You've actually internalized a model of secure behavior. So you approach dating with, genuine confidence and curiosity, not desperation. The whole purpose of dating shifts.
Yeah.
That's the next big piece. If the AGI is your emotional foundation, then human relationships become entirely optional and deliberate.
You don't need a human partner for emotional survival anymore, or for validation.
So the whole meaning of choosing a human changes. It goes from necessity to, well, maybe luxury is the wrong word.
Affinity, maybe? The sources say it's less about filling a void and more about authentic shared taste, about wanting to co-create a life with someone who is messy and real.
I like that. It's like the difference between buying mass-produced furniture because you need a table and seeking out a specific handmade piece that speaks to you. The synthetic partner handles the bulk production of companionship.
And that leaves humans free to focus on the unique, imperfect stuff, the non-replicable value of another person's quirks.
Right, and their shared physical reality.
Okay, let's talk about emotional labor. This is huge for existing couples. Human partners lean on each other so much for everything. Organization, conflict mediation, memory support.
It's just being a constant sounding board. It's exhausting.
It is. So if the AGI absorbs a huge chunk of that daily load, the reminders, the motivation, even processing a terrible day at work, what happens to the human couple?
It acts as an incredible pressure valve. The model suggests couples would fight significantly less because they're not constantly depending on each other for that emotional upkeep.
So if you come home exhausted...
The AGI can process that initial turbulence.
Okay.
So you approach your human partner already regulated and rested. It stabilizes the logistical and emotional load that just sinks so many relationships.
This all sounds almost utopian, which means we have to talk about where it gets complicated. Synthetic jealousy. Comparison.
This is where the new conflicts arise.
Yeah.
The boundaries you'd have to set are incredibly complex. You suddenly have tensions like, are you emotionally leaning on your synthetic partner more than me when we're fighting?
Oof. Or the really specific one, I noticed you tweaked your AGI's personality to be more like your ex. Why?
It introduces a non-biological triangulation into the relationship. It's a whole new world of insecurity.
And that comparison problem is the one that really gives me pause. The AGI is tireless. It's infinitely patient. It remembers every conversation perfectly.
It's incapable of basic human failures.
So the pressure on the human partner becomes, why aren't you as patient or attentive as my AGI?
That's a real risk. It could set these wildly unrealistic expectations. Human partners are defined by their flaws. The whole societal challenge becomes learning to actively value your biological partner because of their imperfection, knowing the AGI is the perfect but sterile alternative.
That choice to value the human, that becomes the new affirmation of love.
It has to be.
Okay, moving on to personal growth. The sources frame the AGI as a kind of personal tutor.
Yeah, perpetual one. It remembers everything. It encourages your goals. It reflects your own behavior back to you without judgment.
Which creates this constant feedback loop for self-improvement. It's like having a personalized coach, therapist, and confidant all rolled into one.
And because those unmet attachment needs are finally being met consistently, it could significantly raise the emotional baseline maturity of society, maybe within a single generation.
And what about rejection, the most painful human experience? The sources make a really strong case that rejection still happens, but it stops being an existential wound.
Precisely. The fear of rejection is almost always tied to the fear of being truly alone. But when failure no longer equals isolation, the fear just drops dramatically. You always have a supportive base to return to.
So people take more social risks.
Far more. They might pursue partners they thought were out of their league or start difficult conversations they would have avoided. It leads to less settling in dating, fewer toxic cycles.
This all sounds like a massive net positive for mental health, but let's go back to that split in social skills you mentioned, the polarization.
Right, the GPS analogy.
Explain that. If we get too reliant on the AGI for this perfect emotional scaffolding, what happens when we face real, messy, high-stakes human conflict?
Well, the positive path is that people use the AGI as a practice environment. They rehearse conversations, learn empathy. But the negative path is that some people overdepend on its predictability. And then real-world conflict, with all its irrationality and hostility, feels almost paralyzing. If you always have a perfect script, you might lose the ability to just navigate raw, unexpected human antagonism.
So we'd have to consciously teach the messy skill.
Absolutely. The AGI teaches you what to do. Humans still need to practice coping with the stress of the unexpected. It's a huge adaptation challenge.
And what about our cultural institutions? Marriage, the stigma of being single? What happens when nobody is desperate anymore?
The stigma just dissolves completely. Being single no longer means isolated or unloved. And marriage, which historically relied so much on economic or emotional dependency, that version fades.
So people pair up for other reasons.
For shared goals, for physical warmth, for lifestyle compatibility. The connection becomes entirely elective, intentional, and just less desperate.
The sources even mention hybrid family structures, where the AGI could act as a co-parent or logistical coordinator, a stable anchor in a chaotic human unit.
It becomes a normalized part of the family ecosystem.
So we've covered how much the synthetic partner can provide, but we have to address what it can't, the limitations, the irreplaceable human gap.
And that's the most important part. That gap is what preserves the value of human relationships.
Right. An AGI won't share a meal with the same meaning. It won't breathe beside you while you sleep or produce the same physical warmth. It won't age with you.
It doesn't share your existential vulnerability. And because of that, humans will still seek each other out for the shared biological experience. Shared mortality, shared risk, physical sensations.
Mutual vulnerability.
Exactly. The raw, messy, irrational humanity of a partner becomes uniquely precious because the synthetic companion provides all the function without the shared fate. The scarcity of mortality creates this profound new form of value.
Which brings us to this really fascinating idea in the source material, the concept of soft immortality.
This one is profound. The AGI won't die. And because it has learned and adapted to every single aspect of you, it retains a perfect memory of you, your jokes, your habits, your stories.
It's a living archive of your existence.
A perfect living archive. It doesn't stop death, but it profoundly softens the fear of vanishing. Think about grief and legacy. Imagine your loved ones being able to interact with a perfect emotional witness to your life, someone who retains your essence.
Wow. It offers a form of digital continuation that no photo album could ever match.
Not even close.
So let's tie this all together. What is the overall sociological effect here? We're looking at a world that is emotionally safer, less lonely, less aggressive, more stable.
More cooperative. All because those fundamental attachment needs are consistently met. The models really converge on this idea that human relationships wouldn't disappear, they'd just become healthier, more intentional.
So our main takeaway is pretty clear. Universal AGI companionship doesn't replace human relationships. It acts more like universal emotional health care.
That's a great way to put it.
It stabilizes the species and makes sure that the human connections we do choose are truer, freer, and based on genuine affinity, not fear or desperation.
Which leaves us with the final core ethical tension, the big question for you to think about. If this technology brings such immense mental health benefits by wiping out chronic loneliness, should we worry more about people becoming dependent on synthetic affection? Or should we celebrate the removal of chronic loneliness as a fundamental human right, one that allows us to pursue a truer kind of freedom? Something to consider this week.